with others. All right. We are starting with types of lineups today. So this is on Rule 3. So with your orange rule book, go ahead and flip to page 29, 30, and 31. That's where we're going to be spending a good bit of our time, first part of the time of this meeting. There are three types of lineups that you will encounter. The first one is the simplest one, a straight 9. That means all players are playing both offense and defense. The next one is the standard designated hitter rule, or the old school designated hitter rule, whichever way you want to look at it. But this is where we have 10 players that are active in the lineup. 9 players are defensive players, and a 10th player is batting for one of those 9 that is already on defense. And that is the same all game. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that is also, if you ever hear a 10-player lineup, that's what that is talking about. And then the third one is the newest designated hitter rule. And this one, I think we struggle the most with. It was called the player/designated hitter rule. And this is where we have 9 active players in the lineup, but one of those is a super player, and he actually has 2 roles. He's acting as the defensive player when they're on defense, and then he's acting as the designated hitter when they're on offense. So let's talk a little bit more about these. So straight 9, our lineup is going to look like this. You're only going to have 9 people listed. Everybody has a number, everybody has a name, and a position. This is what a good lineup would look for, just a simple straight 9 lineup. I always say thank you to the coach because it really locks them into more simple substitutions and less things to worry about when you get a straight 9. Here's what a standard designated hitter looks like. And in this scenario, the number 3 over on the side is circled because of my plate conference that I have with the coach. After he hands me the lineup, as I'm looking at it, I will always double check with him. Okay, I see you have a DH in the 3 spot. So that's whenever I circle the number 3. And then I just confirm with him. That means Joe is your hitter and Landon is your player, correct? Because if something is wrong, this is the time that you need to fix it at. So, and you notice both of those players are locked into the 3 spot of the lineup. They're both written there, and that's where they have to stay for the entirety. More on that to come. This is what a player designated hitter looks like. And I'm sorry that it's a little faint, but or light, writing on the lineup, but this is how it's going to appear. So if you look in the 4 spot, again, Coach Clemens handed me this lineup. I looked at, so I see you have a player DH in the 4 spot, and he's confirmed yes. And so I circled that. So this is the 9-player lineup that could expand to a 10-player lineup depending on substitution. So that's what the lineup cards will look like. Let's start with the standard designated hitter. Okay, before I get into this, a straight 9 is just everybody's in a lineup spot, nobody changes, subs, re-enter rule, all of that applies. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about straight 9 when there's so much else designated hitter stuff that we can work with. Also, I do want to add something in now too before I get into this. In high school baseball, the DH is the only way that you can get an additional batter hitting. And even then, you only have 9 batters batting. There is no extra hitter rule in high school baseball. That's a summer ball thing, select league, whatever, try and get everybody in the game. In high school varsity contests, there is only the standard designated hitter or the player designated hitters. Okay, so here we go. Let's jump into the standard DH rule. This is 3-4A on page 30. So if that's not open in your rule book, please get it open because it really is important. Okay. So here's the thing about designated hitter. It must be announced on the lineup at the plate meeting. And if you're the plate umpire, just as I kind of said before, please double check and make sure that how they have it written is how they want it to be done. Okay. Sometimes these coaches can get things mixed up. Oh, I want this person to be in this. And at the plate meeting, if you are catching it as you are handed a lineup card, you are just saving a really big situation. The designated hitter must be announced on the lineup card at the plate meeting. If they do not announce a designated hitter, then the DH is done. You can't do anything. You can't add it later, okay? This scenario in the standard DH, it can be for any player, not just pitchers. Say your right fielder is a really weak hitter, but he's a great outfielder, got a lot of speed, and can catch a ball in right field. Then wonderful. You can have a designated hitter for your right fielder. You could have a designated hitter for your catcher. You could have a designated hitter for your third baseman. It doesn't matter. Any player could be eligible as a designated hitter, not just pitchers. Okay. And as I mentioned before, both players are locked into that same spot in the lineup. So Joe Macinas, if you look there, Joe Macinas cannot change spots in the lineup. He cannot magically end up in the 8th spot in the lineup. Likewise, if Landon Tucker ever wants to bat, he can't insert himself down in the 7th spot for Timbers. He has to enter in that 3 spot. That's why they need to be written side by side. Sometimes you'll get a lineup card. Let me get my pen here. Sometimes you'll get a lineup card where it's written down here in this 10 spot, down here in this line. You just need to know that really and truly it needs to be there where they're all in the same row, all in the same line. So that way you can tell exactly where everything is. And so that way you don't get confused. Okay. Keep going. Both players are actually considered starters. Therefore, both players are eligible for the re-entry rule. Say you want to sub someone in for Messina. Say, look at Faulkner. You want to have him come in and pinch run for Messinas. Okay, that's totally legal. And then Messinas can even re-enter the next time he comes up to bat. He absolutely can re-enter. Same thing with Landon. Landon is the fielder. Say Gonzalez, Juan Gon, is going to go into right field again and come back to his high school playing years. He can substitute in there for Tucker for 1 inning. And then Tucker can re-enter back into that same. But again, they're both locked into that same 3 spot. I have something in the chat I want to check real quick. Yeah, Jacob said, don't make a coach redo his lineup card if he puts it in the 10 spot. Yeah, don't make him redo it. You as an umpire just need to know. And if you need to write it out to the side yourself, that's a good thing too. Okay. DH. Now, this is where we always get confused. This is where problems start. The DH is terminated or done when 2 things happen. Number 1, the defensive player or sub, whoever enters for the defensive player, becomes an offensive player. So in this case, if Tucker ever bats, or if Tucker ever runs the bases, or any sub for Tucker ever runs the bases, then that means Messinas is out, the DH is done, and you go back to a 9-player lineup. Okay? And the opposite is also true. The offensive player or sub enters the game on defense. So if Messinas is going to go and say he's going to play third base in the 4th inning, well, that means Tucker's out and Messinas is in, and you go back to a 9-player lineup. Okay? And you mark this on your lineup card and you go on from there. So in this scenario, the standard DH, if they ever switch roles, oh, wait, look, I made a great thing. The DH is done. Let me say it again. If any players switch roles, the DH is done. I think this is the easier DH rule just because it's been in our game a little bit longer. And I think it's a little more straightforward. There's less, kind of if-thens and kind of things with that. So hopefully we're all clear with the standard designated hitter. Let's talk with the player designated hitter. And I actually had a coach on Tuesday walk up to me and he said, hey, Caleb, I'm trying out this new player DH thing, and I really don't know what I'm doing. Can you look over my lineup just to make sure it's right before we go out to the plate? And I smiled and I laughed and I said, sure. So it's new for the coaches still. It's new for us, but we don't have an excuse anymore because it's been in our game for several years now, and we've just got to be able to get better at this a lot quicker. Okay, so here we go. We have our player designated hitter in this one, and same 2 things begin. Number 1, the DH must be announced on the lineup at the plate meeting. And the player DH can be for any position, not just pitchers. So you can have a first baseman that is probably only going to play maybe 2 innings or so, and then he's going to be subbed out, but you want him to still be the designated hitter. So then that's a good scenario where you would need to put him as the player DH, okay? So let's play this situation out even further. Say your real first baseman is pitching this game, okay? But the guy that you have playing first base is an okay first baseman, but he's a really great hitter. So he becomes the player DH, so to speak, and then whenever they make a sub, then he will come out of the game and just stay as the DH, and everybody else will shift around, and have a legal sub. We'll talk about subs a little bit here with it. So that is the situation that you would use a player DH for, is once they remove themselves from defense, they are still in offense, okay? This player, so if you look, Braden Gant is the player who's the player DH, has two positions. He is, number one, the pitcher in this scenario. He's fielder number one, and he is the designated hitter. When he's on defense, he's acting in his pitcher role, the defensive role. When he's batting, he's acting as the batter designated hitter role. Okay, and that's a very important clarification coming up here in just a little bit, okay? The defensive player, so, you know, and you got to kind of compartmentalize. The defensive player may be substituted for while leaving the offensive player as the DH still in the game. And this is where we go from 9 players to the active lineup to 10 players to the lineup, okay? So if you look over at my lineup card over here, you can see that I circled the number 1, right? The position 1 right there. That is telling me that that position was substituted for, and now number 8, Burks, came in to pitch. So 8, Burks is now my pitcher, but Gant is still in the game as a designated hitter. Now, this lineup card now looks very similar to the other DH rule, but it's very important. It started as a player DH, so it can never become the traditional standard DH. They are 2 completely separate things. They have 2 completely separate rules, especially the ones that are coming up right now. So in this scenario, player DH to start, Burks came in and substituted for the defense, but Gant is still staying in the game on offense. The original player DH may re-enter the game 1 time on defense. So if Gant wants to now enter the game on defense again, that's a re-entry as a starter, because he started the game on defense. He's re-entering, but that is his 1 time that he's allowed that, okay, as a part of the re-entry rule, okay? And this is where it gets a little confusing. The DH is terminated when either, number 1, the sub or former sub for the defensive role participates in offense. So this is, again, where they cross paths or, you know, cross roles. So if the defensive role goes in on offense, the DH is done, okay? So in this scenario, what that would look like is if Burks ever came in and batted for Gant in that spot, now the DH is done, okay? The other, so any other substitution for Burks that would come in, let's say, Kurtz wants to come in and play defense out there, and if he wants to come back, again, he's crossing roles, then that means the DH is done, okay? And this is where I think it is the hardest one for me to wrap my mind around. That is the weird caveat of this rule. If the starting defensive player DH is substituted for on offense, it wipes out that entire line, and it possibly could wipe out 2 players at the same time, okay? That means that DH is done, okay? So let's take the scenario that we're already at. So Gant was our starting pitcher / DH, our player DH, okay? Let's say in the 3rd inning, he got pulled from pitching and Burks came in. So now Burks is in the game defensively while Gant is still as a designated hitter. Now let's say in the 6th inning, the coach wants to sub in, let's see, who else can we pick down here? Lathern. We want to substitute Lathern to come bat for Gant. This is somebody being substituted for on offense, and now Gant is going to be done, and Burks is going to be done. So by Lathern coming into the game, he actually takes out 2 people at the same time. So Gant's gone and Burks is gone. That is the really big catch with this player DH. And it's really funky for us to think about. So let me go over that scenario one more time just to make sure that we really kind of can let this settle in. Gant is a player DH. He's the starting pitcher, and he is batting for himself. He has the 2 positions, okay? In the 4th inning, he's finished pitching. He comes out of the game. Coach puts Burks in to pitch the game, but Gant's going to stay in at bat. let's say Gant is not a very fast runner, and in the top of the 6th inning, Gant hits a single and coach wants to run for him. Totally okay. He's the designated hitter, so you have to actually insert a sub. They insert a sub. Lathern comes into the game. By Lathern entering the game, it takes out the DH rule completely. So Gant is now on the bench, and Burks is now on the bench. Burks was a sub that entered the game, so he's now removed from the game completely. Gant, remember, Gant was a starter. If Gant wants to re-enter the game, he may re-enter the game. However, he has to enter the game as a player on defense and play everything. Bat and play everything, and you're back to 9-player lineup. I think that is the hardest part of all of this. This player DH scenario is just really thinking in of how the DH is terminated when they start substituting people and moving pieces and stuff like that. But it's just go back to your fundamentals. Gant is locked into the 4 spot. He has to hit in that spot forever and ever and ever. He comes out of defense, he's still on offense. Okay. If he is ever substituted for on offense, the DH is finished. Okay. There's a couple things, a few notes as far as player DH to remember. If a pitcher or catcher is the player/DH, when they are on base, they are acting as the designated hitter, not the pitcher or catcher. Therefore, they cannot be courtesy ran for, period. End of sentence. No exceptions. So, for example, when Gant comes up to bat for his first at bat, let's say he knocks a double and the coach wants to try to courtesy run for it, stop. But he's the pitcher. No, he's not. He is the designated hitter. And the coach will understand then. If he doesn't, then smile and tell him again. He's the designated hitter. You know, you placed him as the designated hitter. Same thing with the catcher. If the catcher is the player DH, when he's on the bases running, he is running as the designated hitter, not as the pitcher or the catcher. Okay? Also, when a coach is making a change to the lineup in this scenario, take an extra moment to really clarify what they are asking you, so that way you don't have a mistake. Okay, so say, for example, when Coach Clemens comes out and makes a substitution for Gant to come out of the game, he may walk out to you and say, hey, 8 for 4. Okay, well, 8 for 4, I'd circle all of 4, I'd put in 8. Well, guess what? The DH is done then, right? Or you can need to clarify, hey, 8 for 4, but 4 is staying as the designated hitter, correct? Yes, correct. Okay, take an actual half second just to make sure that you all know what you're talking about. And so everybody's on the same page. Same thing even with the standard DH. Take an extra second. If you can catch a little mistake before it even happens, then you're going to save yourself some huge headaches down the line. Okay, I'm going to pause here because that was a lot of information. We have missed as a chapter a couple of these already this season. And so that's why I wanted to spend some time going over all 3 of these. Do I have any questions of the 3 types of lineups that we have? Straight 9, standard DH, or the player DH?